Hi guys, Artiar here. So for this video, we'll be going through is the top 5 useless Esper that needs a buff. So this 5 Esper, in my opinion, since the beginning of the game until now, I have like very minimal usage of them, or maybe they have been outshined by the certain Esper. They are off meta now, and if I have to actually pick 5 Esper out of this list, this will be the 5 Esper I will go. I would say that they really require a buff. So the first Esper which is already in this list is Luis. Luis here, he have a very good skin. He have this blue flame skin from the RTA, which is warm-up match. It's actually a very pretty decent skin, I would say. Like, he have a skin, he's made for PvP, and he's useless in PvE and PvP. He got a buff, like the overflow damage buff thing for him. Like, he already buffed once, but even though after the buff, he still kind of sucked. So if we look at the reso here, R2, dispel all buff from the target. Most of the Esper from their base kit, if they already have dispel, they might already have this skill. R4 here, when HP below the 50% damage increase. R6 here, upon killing, you have to kill the target, then we only have a 50% overkill damage. You have to kill the target. You have to know that in the current PvP meta, it's so hard to actually kill the target. Like, Anna have self-revive, Zihe have self-revive, Anna requires multi-hit, Wu Yu is hard to kill, Nathaniel you have to kill him before he kill you, Yukine is hard to kill, Iki is, you can't even target Iki, Suiza is, the more you hit him, the more damage and tankiness he is. So in this current meta in PvP 2025, it's so hard to kill a target, and not to mention the overkill damage is only 50%. You can't even overkill when you can't even kill someone else. So this Luis here is totally a useless Esper, and the kit here, the damage multiplier 140% for in 3 hit, and the lower the enemy HP, the higher the damage, and he skills with speed. Everything here doesn't make sense on him. It's really weak. I hope he actually get a buff. Like, currently we have Yukine as a Blizzard Queen Esper. I really hope Luis actually get a buff. Like, what? Let's say we're gonna have a Pokemon game. Yukine is gonna cast a Blizzard, then Luis here maybe cast Sunny Day, then Luis cast a Solar Beam Punch, something like this, right? Like, maybe make it a Weather Esper. I think it will be a good buff for him, but he's definitely no usage. Like, until from the beginning of the game until now, I rarely use Luis at all. Every time I summon a Luis, I'm so disappointed. Okay, then the other one I'm going for, originally Hyde is on my list. Hyde is on my list as well, but Hyde recently got a buff for the golden buff, so he's actually pretty good now. Then the next one I would say is Gaius. Yes, Gaius requires a buff. So Gaius is actually a very good DPS Esper. Is one of the few Esper who have a 2-form unit here. Is very unique. And the problem about Gaius is actually pretty easy to fix as well. The first thing, turning into Thunder God here, don't let him consume a bonus turn. So in our let's say in PvE content, the most problem in Falsetto Fantasy is there's a turn limit, right? So you have to fully utilize every single turn. But for Gaius, from normal mode to turn into what's that called, let me see, the King of God, the mode here, it requires 1 turn. And for the AI of Gaius is actually pretty stupid as well. Like, from his normal mode cast into S3 God mode, then he'll cast S2, then after that he might actually cast back to normal form and cast the dispel here. Like, the bonus turn here actually kind of fuck him up after, since they have turn limit here, because you are wasting a lot of turn for the Gaius. And the other thing is, when you go under Thunder mode, you cast 1 time of Thunderstorm is pretty good. It's a 5-hit damage, but the damage isn't enough for the current meta. The multiplier isn't enough for Gaius to actually be a Thunder God. Right, Mingshaw is the real Thunder God. Mingshaw can cast like a lot more higher multiplier than Gaius. Like, let's take a look at Mingshaw here, right? They are same, the Thunder. Mingshaw here, S3, 90% attack all enemy 3 times, 270%. 120%, 3 times damage per hit. This S3 here is a total of 360% damage, and it's per target. And not to mention, you also ignore defense. And meanwhile, we look at our Thunder God Gaius here. Let's take a look at his multiplier. Where is he? Gaius, his highest damage is the Thunder God form, then go into S3. 120% per hit, you have 5 hit, but this hit here will separate into every enemy. So let's say you max it up 150%. You only land 5 thunder, and let's say enemy got 5 enemy, every enemy only get 150% damage. While Mingshaw is every enemy get 3 hit. Every hit is 120%, so it's a total of every target get 360% damage. It's higher than what Gaius can do. And Gaius have another debuff here, is damage against the same enemy, reduce the damage. At first, at the beginning when Gaius released, he obviously need the damage reduced to not make him too OP, but in the current meta now, reducing this damage with this multiplier, with this separate thunder, is not a very good choice. Mingshaw is now the real Thunder God instead of Gaius. And the S1 here, attack all enemy, AoE damage that only does 40%. 40% is so low. An S1 AoE damage that only does 40% is very low. So let's take a look, for example, Jinchu. So Jinchu here, S1 also kinda does AoE damage, it does 3 hit, but the Jinchu damage here multiplier roughly have a 180%, can does to 3 target. So who else have AoE damage, right? So let's say Farah S1. Farah S1 also kinda can do AoE damage if the target had freeze. 60% and 2 hit, 120% of S1 damage. Who else have multi-hit S1? I don't think okay, Zora is also a useless one. Who else have multi-hit? But basically Gaius multi-hit is very low. So let's go back to Gaius. It's only a 30% okay, if you upgrade it to max, 40% multi-hit. His multiplier is too outdated to the current meta in Dislyte. He really need the buff. Like if I have to recommend AoE damage dealer to the newbie, I will recommend Zora, I will recommend the other Esper, and I won't recommend Gaius, even though he's very cool. He's one of our best design Esper in Dislyte, I would say, but he really requires a buff. And his Divinity requires a buff as well. When in God King mode, the crit damage plus 25% only for the first turn. You increase 25% crit damage only for one time, and in God King mode, meanwhile our Petros here just casually get a 15% forever. Right, so it's so unfair for Gaius. So I really think Gaius requires a buff. If he actually get a buff, he will actually be very strong. The next one I would actually say Biotina, but I would say Biotina is not at the list now because he actually get a buff. She's actually pretty good in Dark Starlord as well. For PvP, if you actually build a very niche build for him, a niche team, she can actually kill blue team. So I would put Biotina aside for now. Then the next one I will be going through is Zora. Zora here, one of our good flow fighter, have massive AoE damage, but her Rezo sucks. So if we look at Rezo here, R2, inflict defend down on a target for 2 turns. This thing here, this inflict defend down on a target, should be already in her base kit. In Galactic Rush, which is her S3, the S3 here, why should I get until R2 to only get the defend down? This defend down debuff, this Rezo buff, should have already been her base kit. So if she really needs a buff, I think it's something like the Phantom Sister or the other buff patch we used to have. Some of their R2 effect become their base kit, right, which is very good. So I think if Zora gets a buff, which she needs, this defend down really needs to become her base kit. Her S3 should already land defend down. Then the R4 effect here is kinda okay. After casting no ability, the next basic ability damage increased by 30%. I would say it's okay. The R6 here, the chance is too low. When any ally attacks, Zora have a 50% chance of assisting with King H. Is too low, 15% chance. Our relief set already have 25% chance, and if we already feel like it's very low chance to trigger, and not to mention Zora R6 only 15%. I think she really needs a buff of the percentage. I think overall her kit is pretty good. Maybe increase the multiplier, make the 15% chance to like 30%, or maybe I think 30% is a good range, or maybe 25%. 15% is just too low to do it. Then you can see S1, the multiplier here, AoE damage only 60%. 60% here is actually very low in our current meta. Then the S3 here isn't really that impressive as well, because only buff blocker. The defense break should already move to her base kit. So Zora here really need to buff her reso effect. The reso effect is just too weak. The reso value on Zora is too low to actually get it. Then the other one I would say is Ashley. So Ashley actually get outshined by Suje, because what Suje doing now, the passive true damage, is originally what we are using for Ashley. Ashley used to be our one of the main passive dealer, because her rainbows, where is it? The rainbow bridge here, the extra true damage is what we usually use it for speed run. Because you want passive damage, we will use Ashley as a passive damage to provide the rainbow bridge and do damage, right? But after Suje came into the game, everyone just use Suje's true damage. It's a lot more consistent. You no need to build the rainbow bridge stack. You doesn't need to crit to do extra true damage that is limited to the enemy max HP and limited to her own attack, which is very bad. And the other thing, which is actually a buff for her, but it's actually a debuff for us, so which is every time you get hit by a critical hit, you get AP push, which is actually good. But we have Yuhime in the meta now. Every time you get AP push, Yuhime will nullify your AP push and get you AP down and do free damage. That's the main two reasons why Ashley is so weak to the meta now. Like, she's doing what Suje is doing, but weaker. Suje is doing so much more better and more consistent. And the model here, why her butt here is so small? The other thing, the reso R2 grants shield to all allies for 1 turn, shield strength 100% of Ashley attack. This should be her base kit, not in the R2. R4 effect here, each surviving enemy grants accuracy by 6%. This is so weak. For R4 Esper, the R4 value here is so weak. We doesn't need this 6% accuracy anymore. Like, maybe in old days in Dislyte, this 6% accuracy might be pretty good, right? But in the current Dislyte here, we don't really need, we just need Lu Shang. We just put one Lu Shang there and we have settled with the accuracy, right? So this R4 here needs a buff and change as well. Then the R6 here gains 1 rainbow bridge stack after casting ability. Is not really that good as well. It's not that OP. I think this R6 effect can move to R2, then make a new R6 effect for Ashley. The multiplier wise, maybe can increase a bit more and make her like multi-hit, I think, because everything of her damage is 1 hit, which is also one of the main issue for her as well. Then the last one for today, I'm gonna say is Bidao. So Bidao here, very cool model. I R6 him just because of his model, but to be honest, it's a very disappointing. Like, his kit is kind of like Hilda, but in petrification mode, but it's actually very hard for us to trigger this thing. Like, there's a lot of immunity. He doesn't have Dispel in his kit. Even Tricky is even a more better Esper than him. Tricky have Dispel, have Misread Up, reduce max HP capacity, have petrification as well. Meanwhile, Bidao here, yes, you have a very good petrification kit. You have like Sardonic Slice, which is kind of like the Hilda deep sleep buff, and then you have like extra higher true damage than Hilda as well for the Soul Snare, but you don't have a Dispel in your kit. You have so many debuff, you have so many controller debuff, and you don't have a single Dispel to actually make him work. Then yeah, so basically anything in his kit here, Bidao is actually not a very good Esper. Even Hilda is even better. Like, the deep sleep is good, the poison is good. You don't really require too much of thing to make Hilda work as well. So I think Bidao requires a buff as well, because he doesn't really do too much as well. So yeah, that's just my own point. I know that there's a lot more Esper requires a buff, like Osana requires a buff. Who else? Fatima requires a buff. Yuran, not really. Then let me go through. Maybe Ginny. Maybe Javid. I think Javid needs a buff. Camille needs a buff. Elaine is good. I mean, Changji needs a buff. Yeah, there's a lot more other Esper requires a buff. There's a lot of very interesting Esper kit in Dislyte. I mean, like, the model is actually good. Some of the Esper model is very good, but they just don't really shine or not really that useful in the current game environment and the situation that we are playing in, like PvE and PvP as well. Right, so feel free to comment down what do you think about it, which Esper requires a buff, who is your top 5 Esper require a buff, and why do you think you should buff them. Okay, feel free to comment down and see you guys in the next video. Bye bye. Special thanks for the direct support on the YouTube membership. So for the benefactor of Artiar, which is JNMP, Yakichiba Tales, Epic Bullet Boy, thank you so much for your support. And for the supporter or patron of Artiar, which is Louis Schneider, Agni, Code Wilderness, Wang Tamer, Ziggy, Kamaruki, Sunwatts, Rimu, Chawny, Antonio Winterspoon, Von Hexa, Yum Kragren, Riku Fred X Iris, Calamity, Rocco Stenzions, thank you so much for your support. Special thanks for the direct support on the live stream super chat for the latest tab. Thank you so much for Code Wilderness, Calamity, Agni, Love Fatima, Fatima Little Underwear, Bloods, Riku Fred, Chawny. Thank you so much for your support.